Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler here. As always, pleasure to be on with you today. Looking forward to jumping into a really exciting conversation. I was just chatting here on Instagram with everybody. Today we're talking about the true nature of love. And I was just saying, somebody mentioned in the comments as we were getting started here, are we talking about human love or divine love? And I thought that was a great jumping point to really start today's conversation, because love is love. Right? Love, and we could say love in its ultimate form is divine love, right? Love, divine love is what we are all made of. It's what the whole universe is made of. It's what life itself is made of. It's what we exist from. And when we talk about human love and how human love is different than divine love, well, that's very true, right? But the reason that human love is different from divine love is because human love has elements of fear mixed in with it. And so what happens for us as human beings is we don't have the capacity to love fully and completely, we could say the way that God loves or the way that the divine loves, because our ability and our capacity to love is distorted through our fear. And as we get started today, I'm just going to give a really obvious example of that, where, say you're in a new relationship with someone. And actually, it's funny, in a new relationship, like in the very early days, a lot of times what we do experience is like pure love. It's just like there's kind of this grace period where we just love so completely and so freely and so unconditionally. But a lot of you will relate to this, probably all of you to some degree, will relate to this where, we call it like the honeymoon phase, or that first little bit where, we just feel so free and so open and so unconditionally loving. But then you'll notice what happens even in the very early stages of a new relationship, maybe within a few days or a few weeks or a few months, is something happens where you'll notice there's like that first moment of fear in a new relationship. And as I say that, I want you to just think about any relationship you've been in. Maybe it's the person you're currently with, or maybe it's a relationship from the past. But think about like when everything was wonderful, when you were in that honeymoon phase and love just came so perfectly and so naturally, it was just flowing through you. And then there's that first moment of fear in a new relationship. And what starts to happen is the heart starts to close. And you start to say, wait, is it safe to love this much? Are they going to cheat on me? Are they lying to me? Can I trust them? Oh, they did something that's different than what I expected them to do. And so now I'm questioning everything, right? There's like this first moment of fear in every new relationship, and it happens to all of us. And then the moment we start to experience fear in that relationship, the heart starts to close and we start to question things. And the authentic love, the kind of unconditional free flow of love that was there at the start of it, it starts to change. It starts to be distorted. And that's a really great example of how, human love is different from divine love, right? Because human love is love, but mixed with fear. whereas the divine doesn't have that fear. And so I actually wanted to start with that idea today, how divine love is what we are all made of, what the universe is made of. It's literally what life is born from. All of existence comes from unconditional, unlimited divine love. And I would suggest that at the core of every human being, that is what's there. And you wonder why love is something that all of us are kind of obsessed with, right? We're all, I mean, whether you're obsessed with avoiding it or getting it, like it's kind of the center point of everyone's life. At the end of the day, everything we want in life could be summed up in love, right? We want to feel safe. We want to feel whole. We want to feel confident. We want to feel peaceful. We want to be happy. We want to be joyful. We want to be inspired. We want to be connected. Like all of the experiences that we're seeking in life could literally boil down to love and different aspects of love. It is the central point of everybody's life. Again, some people are trying to avoid it. Some people are trying to get it, but it's the central point of everybody's life. And whatever we feel that we're missing in life can really be completed by getting love or having love, or really, when I say getting love, what I really mean is finding it within ourselves. But we'll talk about that today. You know, I want to start off today's conversation, I want to talk about the idea of a special relationship or of finding your special someone. And this is one of the ways in which love in our world is distorted from divine love or unconditional, unlimited love. Because what happens, and if you were with me last week, I was talking about how we're trained through fear. And today's conversation is kind of a follow-up to last week, where last week I talked about the trauma that we kind of get ingrained into us at a very young age. And we grow up with a certain kind of trauma and fear-based thinking. And I was talking about how healing is the release from fear, right? That the healed state is really just the state where we are free to love, right? When we can love without fear, that's the healed state. And so today's conversation is kind of a follow-up to last week's conversation, where last week I was talking about fear. Well, today I'm going to talk about love. And I'm going to talk about the true nature of love and what love really looks like. But I want to talk about this idea of the special relationship, or finding our special someone, finding our counterpart. If you've listened to any of the R&B songs from the 90s, you've probably heard the idea that, you know, you complete me, right? This idea that you complete me. And that's something that I think so many of us on a fundamental level are seeking. All of us really are seeking an experience of completion. And it's because of the way that we've been trained through fear. We have not been raised up in a model of completion, of wholeness. We've been raised up in a model of incompletion and in-wholeness, right? Our parents didn't teach us, and they didn't teach us because they didn't know, right? But our parents didn't teach us how to find love within ourselves. Our parents didn't teach us that you are whole, perfect, and complete just the way you are, and all you need to be is the full expression of yourself in every possible way, and everything that you need in life will come to you effortlessly through that full, authentic expression of yourself. That's not what we were taught as children. We were actually taught the exact opposite. We were taught that many of us were taught that, like, you're guilty and you're sinful and you're shameful. And a lot of our religious contexts were woven into this. And, you know, we were told that we need to atone for our sins and all this kind of stuff before we were even old enough to know what a sin was. A lot of us were taught this. It's woven into our religion. It's woven into our culture. It's woven into our relationships in the way we think. It's like, I've talked a lot about how as children, we were not given unconditional love, but rather we were given conditional love. And conditional love means that I love you if you're a good boy or a good girl. I love you if you do what you're supposed to do. I love you if you make your bed and clean your room and you're polite and you say nice things and you do all the things you're supposed to do, right? Like, our parents did not raise us in a model of unconditional love. We were raised in a model of reward and punishment. And when we were good, when we were the little boy or the little girl that our parents wanted us to be, we were rewarded for that. And when we were bad, and when I say bad, I don't really mean bad. I mean that we weren't doing what was expected of us. We were punished for that. And often when we were expressing something authentic, an authentic emotion, an authentic frustration, an authentic feeling, we were punished for that. Like very few of our parents had the emotional attunement, the emotional awareness to really validate what we were experiencing and help us process it in a healthy way. Most of the time when we were not being the perfect representation of who they thought we were supposed to be, we were shut down for it. And I'm not saying this to blame our parents. They didn't know any better than most of us do. I mean, honestly, they probably knew a lot less than most of us do because we have access to information now that they didn't have then. But what I'm pointing to is that we were brought up in a model of incompletion. We were not taught that we are perfect, whole, and complete just in and of who we are. And that all we need to do is express our fullness and our authenticity and our completeness, and that every aspect of our lives would work out perfectly if we just became the fullest version of ourselves. We were taught from a very young age that there's something wrong with us, that our natural impulses are wrong, that, again, a lot of this was woven into religious context of being guilty or being a sinner or different versions of that. But we were taught from a very young age that there was something wrong with us and that we needed to do or be something other than what we are in order to be loved. We weren't taught that we are made of love and all we need to do to be loved is find the love within ourselves and express that in every aspect of our lives. Like, we were not taught that. We were brought up in a model of incompletion. And so now as adults, and really this starts way before we become adults, this starts probably younger than most of us realize, but maybe it starts with Disney movies where we look at the Prince Charming or the princess, or we look at, this idea of the special relationship, this idea of finding our special someone. And it actually starts at a very, very young age, but it becomes very prevalent like middle school and high school when we start dating and we start, being involved with people romantically. And then in our adult lives, we all kind of have this obsession with finding our special someone. And the idea of finding our special someone is really the idea of finding somebody who's going to complete us. Ever since we've been very little children, we've been starved of love. We've been deprived of it. We've been in a transactional, conditional model of love where who we are and what we are authentically has been denied, has been repressed, has been ignored, has been shamed, has been guilted. And then the idea is that somehow we can find this special someone who's going to love and accept us for who we are. And when we find this special someone who loves and accepts us for who we are, then we will be complete. Then we will be whole. Then we will finally feel the love that we've been missing out on our entire lives. And this is basically a global obsession for almost every single person. Now, some people are traumatized in different ways, and there's all kinds of manipulation and toxicity and things that happen as a result of that. But underneath it all, this is what basically everybody is craving. And this is, I'd say this is part of the fundamental problem because we're seeking love where it can't be found. And what this idea of the special relationship or the special person, the special someone who's going to love and accept us for who we are and who's going to be kind of that completion for our lives. And when we find that person, we will finally have the love that we feel like we've been deprived of our whole life. What this really is an inner child wound. And what we're really seeking in that special someone or in that special partner is we're seeking someone to be the parent that we never had when we were younger, right? What we needed when we were younger, and again, our parents were not conscious or aware enough to really give this to us, but what we needed was to be loved unconditionally for who we are as children. That's what we needed. And we didn't get that because our parents just didn't know how to give it to us. They just weren't conscious and aware and attuned enough, and it's understandable. I get where our parents were coming from. I get the world that they were brought up in. I get that they didn't get it from their parents either, and they had it worse than we did, and their parents had it even worse. Right? I mean, like I've talked about this before, how my grandpa grew up in the Great Depression, right? Like he literally, his whole family of like 9 kids and 2 parents lived in a tent in the wintertime. So I get how the world that he came from did not have the consciousness to really be able to understand these things. They were too concerned with survival. And my mom was just one step removed from that. And I know my mom loved me. I don't have a single doubt that my mom loved me. But when I was being raised by her, the message that I got was not that she loved me. The message that I got was that I was not the kid or the little boy that she wanted me to be. And I was brought up in a very strongly religious context where I was taught that I was a sinner. And I was taught that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And I was taught that I needed to atone in all these different ways. And that's just simply not true. That's not who I am. That's not who we are. We are children of God. We are children of the divine. We are made of God's love. And the problem is not that there's something wrong with us that needs to be fixed. The problem is that we have never really recognized the truth of who and what we are. And we've been raised to think that we are something different. We've bought into this model of incompletion, that there's something wrong with us. There's something inherently unworthy about me. There's something inherently shameful about me. And then we've projected that idea outward and said, if I can just find a special someone who loves me for who I am, that will resolve the lack of love, that this emptiness that has lived inside of me for my whole life. And some of you who are listening right now, you might be getting to a place where you're realizing it doesn't actually work that way, because time and time and time again, you get into relationships, and some of you may be married for 20, 30 years right now. Some of you may be just dating or in a relationship. Some of you may be going in and out of relationships. But wherever you are in this journey, you've probably realized that no matter how much love you collect outside of yourself, no matter what kind of relationships you find yourself in, those moments where you feel that kind of complete love, and there are moments where we feel that, but they're fleeting. They come and they go. And you might realize that expecting someone else to provide that for you for every day of your life is an unreasonable expectation. People can barely provide that for themselves. People can't even provide that for themselves, let alone provide that for themselves and then someone else. And I'm not knocking the idea of partnership. I'm happily married. My wife and I have an amazing relationship. We support each other. We are kind to each other. We work together to build a deeply fulfilling life for both of us. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But at the end of the day, each of us has to find something inside of ourselves that gives us purpose and meaning in our lives. That lack of love or that emptiness that we feel, we have to find something inside of ourselves that can provide that. And of course, your partner can support with that. Your partner can create a safe space for you to do that work. Your partner can give you a certain degree of validation and compassion and understanding and warmth as you do that work. And you can do that for each other as you do that work together. But whenever you try to reach out to another person to provide and fill the emptiness that you feel inside of yourself, you always come up empty-handed. And to the degree that we put that pressure on our relationships is the degree that we destroy our relationships. When we consistently look to the other person to provide that for us, and we say, why aren't you doing it? 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 Why can't you meet more of my needs? Why can't you be more of this? Why can't you be more of that? We ultimately push that person away. We suck the life out of them. They have to leave in order to protect themselves. Or we do that to each other and we end up hating each other because we've looked to each other for the last 20 years to fulfill our needs and neither one of us were able to do it. And so a lot of people say like this, they stay married for 20, 30 years, but they hate each other's guts. They completely resent each other because the other person never provided what we thought they were supposed to provide for us. And going back to where I started, if we talk about the difference between divine love and human love, this is the difference. This is the difference. Human love comes with expectation. It comes with condition. It comes with fear. And so today we're talking about the true nature of love. The true nature of love is love without expectation. It's love without condition. It's love without fear. And in the Inspired Love program, which is where I work with my clients, in my private coaching practice, in my podcast, like wherever I teach, what I'm really teaching, I think the essence of what I teach is how to operate from a place of love that is more reflective of the divine, that is more reflective of the way that God loves. And we don't have to do this perfectly, right? We don't have to do this perfectly, but we do have to do it well if we want to have healthy, conscious, compassionate, loving relationships. And so if we remove the conditions, if we remove the expectations, if we remove the fear, if we stop worrying about what we're getting from our relationships and start focusing on what we can give to our relationships, I think that's a big first step. And I want to talk to the singles for a moment, and I'll talk to the people who are coupled as well. But I want to talk to the singles for a moment because a lot of the reason for those of you who are single and you're looking for a relationship, you want a relationship, which again, I want to say is a valid thing. I truly believe that life can be much better in partnership. Going through life with a loving, committed partner, that can be a huge improvement. That can be a huge improvement on your life versus going through it alone. However, going through life in a partnership that's not loving and not warm and not compassionate, that can make your life a lot worse than if you were doing it alone. So while desiring a partner is a worthy thing to strive for, it's a worthy thing to want, if you're not going about it in a healthy, conscious manner, what you're going to create are only situations that actually make your life worse. And the thing that you're hoping to experience in partnership is always going to elude you. So I'm going to speak to the singles for a moment. And some of the ways I see this show up a lot in the dating world is that rather than loving unconditionally in terms of the people you interact with, whether it's on a dating app, whether it's people you go on dates with, rather than kind of unconditionally loving everybody that you interact with, there's a certain perspective on it where we're looking at it like, can I get what I want from this person? Can I get what I want from this person? And when we determine that maybe we can get what we want from this person, oh, well, all the love comes out then. We're our best selves. We're warm. We're kind. We're inviting. We're generous. We're available. But when we think that we can't get what we want from the person, there's a kind of switch that flips inside of us and we treat them like they're not even worth our time or attention. There's a dehumanizing thing that happens when we start judging people based on whether or not we can get what we want from them versus judging every single person as a human being who is worthy of our love. And you might say, well, I'm not attracted to that person. Does that mean they're not worthy of your love? You might say, I went on a date with them and they were so dull, they were so boring. Does that mean they're not worthy of your love? Right? So there's a willingness to have a heart big enough that it can love everyone. And there's a distinction between recognizing the kinds of relationships that we have with people. Like, look, not every person in the world can be my wife. I only get to have one of those. Right? So I'm only going to have one relationship that is like the relationship with my wife. But love is something that I can have for everyone. Just because I only have one wife doesn't mean I only love one person. The form in which I love other people may be different, right? And there's a certain kind of love that I have for my coaching clients. It's very different than the kind of love I have for my wife. Certain kind of love I have for my friends. Certain kind of love that I have for strangers on the street or the person checking out my groceries at the store or the haters on my Instagram who leave me nasty, hateful comments. Right? Might be a different kind of love for each of these people, but the quality of it can be the same. And the quality of it can be, I see you as a beautiful, whole human being who is worthy of love, who is worthy of connection. And yes, I might need to determine how our relationship looks. If somebody is toxic, if time and time again, when I try to open myself up to someone, they try to manipulate or control or take advantage or hurt me, then maybe I need to go no contact with them. Maybe I need to say, listen, I've tried on several occasions to have a place for you in my life. It seems that you're not in a place where you're able to responsibly handle that. And so what I need to do is I need to create some distance. I need to create some boundaries. But the quality of love I have for you as a worthy human being, as someone who is deserving of love, that doesn't need to change. Just because I'm determining the kind of relationship that I want to have with you. I find it so interesting how quickly we can vacillate from loving someone. Oh my God, I love you. They're everything to me. Oh, I want to be with them. Giving so much of ourselves to someone. And then maybe they end the connection, or they create a boundary, or they do or say something that you don't like. And then we can flip all the way to the other side. It can very quickly go from love to hate in an instant. And what that shows is that love was never really there. If you flip from love to hate in an instant, there was never really love there. What there was a manipulative game you were playing to try to get what you want from the person. Thanks for tuning in today. And if you enjoy the Conscious Love Show, there are a few things you can do with just a few seconds of your time that will really support us in being able to continue bringing these messages to you every single week, completely free of charge. The first thing you can do is give us a 5-star rating on one of the major podcast platforms. The two most popular for this show are Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but you can leave a rating on any platform where you listen to this podcast. And if you'd be willing to take just an extra moment, you can write a few words about the show and share with people how it's touched you and the difference it's made in your life. That will go a very long way in supporting our show. Possibly the biggest thing you can do to support the show is share it with someone that you know can benefit from it. If you get a lot out of it, it's very likely that a friend or loved one of yours will too. And I appreciate it so much when people share the show. If you wanted to take the extra step, you could post a link to today's show on your stories or socials and help get the word out in that way. If you'd be willing to take just one of these steps today, I would appreciate that so much. And I want to say thank you in advance for caring about the show and being willing to support it. Thanks again for listening today. Your presence here means everything to me, and I hope you continue joining me each week for many years to come. Lots of love, and let's get back to the show. And the moment you couldn't get what you wanted from them, you switched from love to hate. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't feel disappointment. It doesn't mean that we don't get let down sometimes. It doesn't mean that we don't feel sadness. Like all of these things are human experiences, right? But if I'm in a relationship with someone, maybe it's a new relationship, maybe we've been dating for a while, and I'm really giving it everything I have, like I really want this to work, and then the other person decides that for whatever reason, it's not the right fit, or they don't want it to work, or it's not working for them, or whatever. And they need to end the connection. It's okay to feel that. Like, I'm not saying that we should be impervious, like, oh, it's all love and light. I never feel anything bad. No, that's just inauthentic. That's just being full of shit. But you can feel that without hating the other person for it. Right? You can feel that, oh, it's a letdown. It's a disappointment. I had my hopes up about this. I was excited about this. I wanted this to go somewhere. It feels sad to me that I was excited about this and now I'm let down. But I don't have to hate the person because of it. I don't have to attack them. I don't have to judge them. I don't have to start turning them into a horrible person or saying about all the horrible things they did or go talk to my friends about what a jerk they were or any of that. I can just feel my feelings around it. I can actually love myself through the experience and also continue to love that person. And I don't have to know someone that well to love them either. Again, when I'm at the grocery store and they're checking out our bags, I take a moment to consciously send the person checking out the bags some love. We had a landscaper working in our yard the other day. I stood at the window and watched him work in the yard, and I took a moment to consciously send him some love. Because our willingness to love others is actually just our willingness to love ourselves. You see, this is what so many of us don't understand, is that whatever thoughts you think about other people are really thoughts you think about yourself. When you attack somebody because they didn't live up to the expectations you set for them, right? When you have a certain expectation, oh, we're going to spend our lives together, we're going to get married, or we're going to be together, or something like that. And then they don't live into that expectation that you had, and you attack them. What you don't realize is actually happening is that their choice to go in another direction or end the relationship or whatever it was, their choice to do that One, it was just a personal decision for them. It really had nothing to do with you. But what is being reflected to you when they make that choice are your own thoughts and feelings of inadequacy, right? This is where our childhood wounds are activated. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I'm not wanted. Our fears and our anxieties about the future. It's never going to happen for me. I'm never going to find what I'm looking for. Nobody's ever going to love me. Right? So our wounds from the past, our fears of the future, all of this gets activated. And then we attack that person. They shouldn't have done that. But all we're really doing is attacking ourselves. Because when you attack that person, what you're doing, when you disconnect the love that you are offering them, you're also disconnecting the love that you're offering yourself, or that you could be offering yourself. You are reinforcing those doubts and fears and feelings of unworthiness. By attacking that person. When you handle that situation and you say, okay, this doesn't feel good to me. It's challenging. It hurts right now, but I'm going to love myself through this, and I'm going to respect their boundary, their decision, their choice for their life. I hope they find everything they're looking for in the same way that I hope I find everything I'm looking for. That actually expands the presence of love. Your ability to handle that situation in that way almost guarantees that the next thing you attract into your life will be more loving than the previous one. Now, I say almost because there are a lot of wild cards out there and different things happen for different reasons, and we're all on an individual journey. But this is what I've seen to be true time and time and time again. Is that the way we attract love, the way we attract a loving partnership into our lives, if for those of you who are looking for that life partner, that loving partnership, we don't attract that by resenting all the bad things that have happened in our past. We attract that by forgiving all the bad things that have happened in our past, by loving all the people who hurt us. Because again, as I was saying, your ability to love all of that and all of them is just simply your ability to love yourself. When you're carrying resentment and grudges and fears and disconnection and all these defenses, and you're afraid of being hurt and you don't want to let people in, and you're trying to size people up and trying to predict them and trying to beat them to the punch and hurt them before they hurt you. And when you're doing all this stuff, you're not available for love. You're just going to attract more of that. And what that really is, like all that stuff I just described, all it really is a resistance to your own pain. Someone said earlier that people try to externalize bad feelings. That was 100%. That's exactly what we do. Right? You've been hurt in your past. You've been let down. You've gone through heartbreak. People have disappointed you. People have broken promises to you. People maybe cheated on you, maybe violated you in some way. You've been hurt in the past. And there's something in you that says, I don't want to feel the things I felt in the past again. So rather than being loving as I move forward in my life, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be protective. I'm going to be defensive. I'm going to size people up. I'm going to play manipulative games. I'm going to make sure I beat people to the punch. I'm going to make sure I'm never taken advantage of. I'm never going to be vulnerable. I'm never going to be open with people. And so we develop this whole strategy to try to protect ourselves from pain. And then what happens is our capacity for love dies. And then we wonder why we attract the same kinds of toxic, narcissistic people over and over and over and over again. It's because that's all we're available for. And look, I'm not saying that if you love unconditionally or you love fully with your whole heart that you're never going to attract a toxic or a narcissistic person. You might, but the difference is when you're connected to love and somebody who is so unloving is showing up in a reflection to you, there's going to be a clear boundary where it's like, no, I'm not open for this. I see what you're bringing to the table and I don't want to sit down at that table with you. I love you, but I also recognize that we're in different places and we're not compatible for each other. And so in my love, I'm going to create a boundary. I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to wish for you to find love and healing and everything that you need in your life, but I'm going to stay focused on what I need in my life. When you're disconnected from love, you're actually more likely to get roped into that kind of situation. It's so interesting how the more defensive we are, the more susceptible we are to toxic situations. When the more connected and loving we are, the more clearly we can see a toxic situation for what it is. I know that seems like a paradox, right? It does. But the reason for that is because like higher guidance and intuition comes from love. When you're all in your ego, last week I talked a little bit about the ego. I'm not going to go too much into it today, but the ego is the protective mechanism, right? The ego is it's like we give up divine protection and divine guidance and instead rely on our own kind of strategic, manipulative, protective mechanisms. When we disconnect ourselves from our higher guidance and our intuition and rely on our small, controlled, manipulative part of ourself to protect ourselves, we actually become more susceptible to toxic and damaging situations. Because we lose the ability to feel into what is right or wrong for us. Like that's like a God-given ability to be able. There's actually I was watching a show with my wife, Greg Braden. Some of you may know who Greg Braden is. He's like a scientist, researcher type person, but he talks about how built into the human body. Because he talks about like when we were cave people and somebody was walking into your cave, you didn't have, 20 minutes to sit down and talk to the person and find out what they were about. You had to know immediately if this person was a threat or not. So like built into the human system is the ability to instantly feel into someone's energy and know if they pose a threat to you or not. That is built into who we are. But when we disconnect from our bodies and we live inside of our minds and we try to control and figure everything out mentally, we disconnect from that natural ability to know what is safe and what's not. The more protective we are, the more vulnerable we become. And I don't mean vulnerability in a good way. Sometimes I talk about vulnerability in a way of being open with someone. I talk about being vulnerable in terms of being susceptible to attack. Because you see, love is wise. When you can see everyone through a loving perspective, there's a kind of wisdom that comes from that. When you can look at everyone through a loving perspective, you also have the ability to kind of assess where someone is in their journey. And this isn't a judgment. Judgment comes from fear. Judgment is a protective mechanism. Judgment is where you put someone down because you see something about them, and because of whatever you see, you put them down because of it. Love does not judge, But love does have the kind of wise ability to assess where someone is. And in assessing where someone is, you can see, oh, well, you know what? Maybe we're in different places. Like I can look at that person and I can see them in a wholly loving perspective. And I can see, okay, they have some wounds. And I can see that their wounds are being activated in certain situations. I can see that maybe they don't have the maturity to be able to process these wounds in a healthy way. I can see that maybe they lack the necessary communication skills to be able to navigate a challenge in a healthy and responsible way. I can see that maybe we're in different places. And I can see that maybe there's an incompatibility there. And what's part of that is when you are able to see someone in that kind of wholly loving perspective, that's a reflection of how you see yourself. And so what's actually happening in that situation is your loving perspective of that person is a reflection of your own self-love. And because that self-love is intact, if that situation is not healthy or helpful for you, you will remove yourself from it. But when you're in your ego, when you're in your defensiveness and your protectiveness and your kind of controlling manipulative strategies, what's being reflected is your lack of self-love. What's being reflected are your feelings of unworthiness, your feelings of, I don't think I'm lovable. I don't think I'm going to be loved for who I am, so I have to control and manipulate love. This is why you become more susceptible to damaging relationships. Is because what's being reflected externally is the lack of confidence and certainty in yourself internally. So I think I've done a pretty good job here of talking about the nature of love. And as someone mentioned earlier, right, the difference between divine love and human love, which I would say humans have the capacity for divine love. And maybe arguably we could even say that's what this whole life is about. This whole life is about us healing whatever's going on inside of us that is limiting our capacity for divine love so we can express it more fully. Maybe that's really what we're all doing here. And we live in a sea of fear. And all the fear that we experience and all the different forms of fear and manipulation and control and violation and all of that kind of stuff that happens in our world, seeing these forms of fear all around us is really something that we are given as a reflection so that we can recognize love for what it is. And so that we can tune ourselves more to the frequency of love. We could arguably say that that's what all of life is about. But I want to talk a little bit, as I bring this episode to a close, I want to talk a little bit about what the process to become more loving really is. And if you were with me last week, a lot of people reached out and said that last week's podcast really touched them. If you were with me last week, I talked about how healing is simply the release of fear. And so to put it in context of this conversation, we could say that love is what the entire universe is made of. It's what we are all made of in the core of who we are. Love is where we come from. Love is ultimately what we're returning to. And in this interim period that we call our human lives, we could say we've taken a detour into fear. We've taken a detour from our true nature, from the place we come from and the place that we're returning to, and we've taken a detour into fear. And there are lots of theories about why we might have done that, and I'm not going to get into all of that today. But in this detour into fear, we've forgotten the true nature of love. We've forgotten what love is really all about. And we could say that, if you look at children, like children are pretty unconditionally loving, or like animals, like I look at my dog, like my dog is the most unconditionally loving creature like I've ever met. He loves everybody. He loves all out. He has no fear, and he's never been taught fear. Like he has been kept completely safe, and he has, he's experienced a little bit of discipline, and he's experienced a little bit of training, but he has been kept completely safe his entire life. He has experienced unconditional love his entire life. So that's all he knows. And he is the pure essence of unconditional love, right? Children are like that before they get trained differently. And you see how children will run up and hug people. They'll jump into people's laps. They'll laugh, they'll cry, they'll play, right? There's a kind of unconditional nature about children where they just love all out. And so we could say that the essence of who we are as human beings, what we're born with, is a kind of unconditional love. And then something happens in our upbringing that changes that. Something happens as we're being brought up in this world where we are taught fear. We are taught to be afraid. There are a lot of, we could say, bad things happening in the world, a lot of violence, a lot of aggression, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of control, manipulation, power dynamics, different kinds of things like that happening in the world. And a lot of us live under the perception that these things are being done by horrible people that want to perpetrate these things. That's an unloving perception. These things are not being done by horrible people who want to perpetrate these things. These things are being done by terrified people that are so disconnected from the love inside of them that they know no other way to be. Something I learned a long time ago was that it takes a victim to make a victim. Right? There's not a single person in the world who has ever hurt another person who hasn't first been hurt themselves. And what's often happening when we look at all the horrible things that take place in this world is it's a perpetuation of the pain that has been done to us or to people. And because people have been hurt, they hurt other people. When we look at the world through love, we recognize that there's not a single bad person in the world. There are just deeply hurt people. And I understand some of the pain that people go through can be very, very, very extreme. And some of the results of that pain can be very, very, very extreme. And it's very easy to look at it on a surface level and judge them as bad people. But when you really look at the stories of how those bad people became the way they became, you inevitably find there's always a reason for it. And I'm not justifying those things, but I'm having a level of compassion for the things that people go through in this world because that's what love does. And so how do we become more wholly loving? And the way is simply through forgiveness. And when I talk about forgiveness, I think forgiveness easily gets reduced to, oh, they hurt me and I'm going to forgive them. Or, oh, they did X, Y, Z, I'm going to forgive them for that. I want you to think about forgiveness like this. Forgiveness is giving up the pain of the past so that you are free to love and give as though before it ever happened. I'm going to say that one more time. Forgiveness is giving up the pain of the past so that you are free to love and give as though before it ever happened. Forgiveness is a clearing up of all the pain that has been done to you so you can stop passing that pain on to other people. And when we forgive, and so you might say, how do we forgive? Well, that's quite a process for some of us. And it's a practice. But we forgive by becoming attuned to all the unforgiving thoughts in our mind. So we forgive by first being introspective with how toxic our own thinking is. And most of us have a way of going out in the world and acting like we're good people, and we are good people. I don't want to say we're not good people. But often the disconnect between our thoughts and our behavior is quite extreme. The disconnect between what we think about a person versus what we say to their face is often quite extreme. And this is where we've got to be courageous enough to look at our own inauthenticity. We could say this is our shadow. This is the part of ourself that we withhold from the world. This is the part of ourself that we hide. The part of ourself that we don't let other people see. The part of ourself that we sometimes don't even let ourselves see. When we talk about shadow work, what we're talking about is facing up to the parts of ourself that we have been unwilling to be with. And so forgiveness comes by looking at these aspects of ourselves and recognizing that even the things that we think that we don't want to think, even the judgments we have that we're ashamed to have, are simply protections against our own pain. The same way that loving others is a reflection of self-love, forgiving others is a reflection of self-forgiveness. When you have forgiven yourself for all the things that you hold shame and guilt around. In my Inspired Love program, we do a pretty lengthy process around shame and guilt, around really facing up to the areas in our lives where we carry shame and guilt. And what that's really about is about clearing away all of the parts of ourselves that we deem unworthy. And so as we clear away all the parts of ourselves that we deem unworthy, there's a kind of forgiveness that takes place. And when we've really forgiven ourselves, we can look back in our lives and we can forgive everything that's ever happened to us. And that doesn't mean that I condone maybe the behavior that took place. If somebody violated or abused me, I don't condone that behavior. But I can understand that it was a person who was operating in their own pain. It was a person operating from their own trauma that caused that behavior. And maybe there are certain boundaries that need to be in place. Maybe that person needs to be in prison. Maybe that's the appropriate consequence for the action. But we can even send them to the place that they need to be in love. We can do that for them just as much as we might do it for ourselves. You see, love is not about what you do. It's about how you do it. It's about how you think about it. I want to share one story real quick because I put up a post on Instagram. This is a little while back, maybe a couple months ago or something like that. And a lot of people ended up attacking me for the post. And I don't want to go into the details of what it was all about right now, but I had shared a certain opinion, a stance that I have on something. And a lot of people attacked me for that opinion. And there were some pretty vicious ones. And I mean, they ranged from mild to vicious and everything in between. But I'll just say that because of this post, I lost like 1,000 followers in one day, which is okay. You know, like I don't mind if people don't want to follow me because we don't align on certain things. That's totally valid. I don't want anyone to follow me who doesn't get value out of following me. Like that's just the simple truth. But I put up a post, I put up in my stories, I said that, I'm sharing an authentic opinion, something that is important to me. And I'm not going to have my voice silenced just because people have different opinions. And if you have different opinions, I respect you. But I would ask that you also respect my opinion. And I said that if you are going to attack me for my opinion, then I hope that you do unfollow me. And I want to tell you that I'm very happy to see you go. And I'm sharing all this to say that I got a message from someone. And he was very offended, not about the opinion that I shared, but about what I said on that story. And he was saying that I think a conscious person like you, or someone who claims to be conscious like you, someone who claims to be loving like you, could never have said something like that in your stories. And he was specifically offended by the fact that I said I was happy to see people go. And this is, I think, one of the paradoxes that we struggle with around love. I hold nothing against any of those people who unfollowed me. I hold nothing against even the people who attacked me. I've completely forgiven all of it. I have no energy on it, zero. But I can also recognize that there are certain people, places, and situations that are not compatible. As I was sharing earlier, that comes from a perspective of love. That is the clarity that love gives me. And so if someone's going to disrespect my ability to have an opinion on something, and they're going to not only have a difference of opinion, which is totally okay, but they're going to attack me for it. They're going to slander me. They're going to make personal attacks on myself and my dignity because I have an opinion that's different than theirs. I am happy to see that person go because I don't have space for someone like that in my life. And I love that person. I can recognize that that person needs to do that because there's a lot of stuff inside of them that is not healed. And they cannot respect my ability to have a different opinion of them the same way that I can respect their ability to have a different opinion. And I don't care what your opinions are. You can have any opinions you want. We can be friends as long as we have the ability to have respect in our relationship. But if we don't have the ability to have respect in our relationship, we can't have a relationship. Well, let me put it this way. The only relationship that we can have is that in my mind, I'm going to send you loving thoughts and hope that you find everything you're looking for in life. But our relationship is not going to extend beyond that because as somebody who loves myself, respect is a deal breaker in any relationship I have. Because a lot of us think that love is weak. Love is not weak. Love is strong. Fear is weak. And all of the different forms of aggressiveness that we see in the world that are often perceived as strength are usually just people masking how deeply afraid they are. It's people putting on a show of strength to mask their weakness. Love has no weakness. Therefore, it has nothing to hide, nothing to protect, nothing to defend against. And so, what I want to leave everybody with today, and I'm going to open up for questions here in a moment. What I want to leave everybody with today is to seek and find the place inside yourself that is wholly loving. Work to forgive yourself and forgive everyone else for everything that's ever happened. Don't hold on to grievances. Don't hold on to judgments. To the degree that you do that, you are simply keeping everything that you want in life out of your life. And as you forgive yourself and everyone else for everything that's ever happened, as you start to find peace in your life, what's going to start to happen is love as a pure essence of being is just going to start to pour out of you because you're no longer going to be afraid. You're no longer going to be judgmental. And as that pure essence of love starts to pour out of you, it's going to be attracted back to you. For those of you who are seeking a loving partnership, this is the only way it can be found. It's not found through manipulated games of, oh, well, you didn't text me, I'm not going to text you, and I'm going to make you sweat, and that doesn't create love. That just creates more fear, more manipulation, more conflict. Love creates love. Love gives you the insight to see who is actually loving. And the way to find love is through forgiveness. When you let go of everything you're holding against yourself and you let go of everything you're holding against others, love is the only thing that's left. So that's the message for today. As I said, this is one of my favorite things to speak about, and it's a powerful message. It is the way that we heal not only ourselves, but we heal the world. The more people who can start to operate from this holy, loving place, the more loving the world becomes. I don't see any questions today. Brown-Eyed Girl says, thank you for your powerful and supportive words. Thank you, sending love. Janice Guertin says, thank you. My first time with you. Looking forward to more. Thanks for being on, Janice. Make sure to check out the podcast, The Conscious Love Show. You can find it on all platforms. Great to have you here today. Queen Consciousness says, thank you. Your content is very helpful. Keep lighting up the world. Thanks. Thank you. Lots of love. Thank you so much. Seabuys84 says, thank you so much. Okay, well, if there are no questions today, thank you to those of you who were sending love and appreciation. I really appreciate that. And thank you for being on with me today. If there are no questions, I think I'm going to go ahead and close out today's episode. But it's been a pleasure being on with you as always. Lots of love, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. For those of you who are maybe just joining in, this is the Conscious Love Show. Make sure to tune in on all major podcast platforms. To those of you who are listening in on the podcast, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening in. Lots of love to you as well. Hope you continue to keep tuning in. I will see you back here next week. Lots of love, everybody. Many blessings. Take care and have a great one. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.